Hello and welcome to our 6th session, and in this session we are going to learn about the visualization, and again this is related to the 3D viewport. So coming back here, so I have launched Blender. I will come into my general, that is the new file, and in this we are going to discuss about the icons that we are seeing on the right hand corner here, and I am going to start with the first icon here. And this icon is called as Selectability and Visibility. So what this icon does is, if you click on this, you have different categories of objects here: mesh, curve, surface, meta, text. So you have so many categories here, and in this category, say for example, I have added one cube here. I will come to add, and I am going to add a text here. I will press G and move it here. Then I will come here and I will add next a spotlight here, and I will move it here. Then I will add one more camera here and I will move it here. So like this, when you have different category of object, now if I come over here and if I select text and switch it off, you cannot select this text at all. See, you cannot make the selection. So if you want to select it again, I have to enable it, and only then you can select it. Similarly here, if I come here and if I switch off cameras, if I switch it off, see, all cameras are now hidden. Or I can switch it on, and if I disable this selectivity, I cannot select any of the cameras. So this category wise to select the objects and make it selectable or visible is what the first setting is going to do. So I will enable selectability and visibility to all the components here. So this is the first tool we have, and the second tool that you see here is called as the Gizmo. So to understand this Gizmo, I will come to file new, and I am going to create a new file. Gizmo is used to transform an object using mouse. So in our next object selection, we are going to deal with this in detail, but as of now, when you select an object, you can move it. Say for example, I have the move tool here, and when I select the move tool, and if you see this red line representing X, green representing Y, and blue representing Z, this means that the Gizmo is on. And if I come here and switch off the Gizmo, see, you cannot see the Gizmo. So if I enable the Gizmo, then you can see the Gizmo is visible. And in this Gizmo, if I click on this arrow and if I open it, first you have the navigate button here. This is going to show this can be made visible, or I can hide it by using this. Then you have active tools here. Active tools means Gizmo will be added for whichever tool you select. Say for example, if I select move tool and click here, you see the move Gizmo. If I select the rotate tool, you see the rotate Gizmo. How this is going to function is, if I take the move Gizmo, you can see here you have 3 axes and 3 planes here. Now if I click on this green axis and if I move it, the object moves only along the Y axis. If I press the red and move it, it moves only along the X axis, and if I click on this blue, it moves only along the Z axis. Now if I click on this, instead of this blue arrow, if I click on this blue plane, now except Z, in all axes I can move it. See, I can move in X and Y, but I cannot move it in Z. So similarly, if I click on green, I can move it in Y axis, but if I click on this green plane, except green, I can move it in X and Z axis now. So, and similarly here, arrow moves it along, the red arrow moves it along the X axis, but the red plane moves it in all axes except red. So the X axis will be locked. So this is how this Gizmo works. And right now, when you have enabled it with active tools and active object, Now only when if I select the rotate tool, you have the rotate gizmo visible. Even here if I click on red and rotate it, it rotates along x axis. Okay, and if you want to see this, you can open this transform window and you can see here. See, when I am rotating it, it is rotating only along the x axis. If I rotate along green, it rotates only along the y axis. If I click along blue, it rotates only along the z axis. Okay, so now I will select all these three here and make it 0, and even the rotation I will select all these three here and make it 0. Now apart from this, you also have scale, and for scale also the same thing applies. If I click on red, you can say here only along the x axis it is getting scaled. I will go to edit and undo it or press Ctrl Z. If I use this red plane except Z, except X in other two axes, see it is getting scaled. And similarly here, even for this applies to green along Y and blue along Z. And gizmos will be generally visible depending upon the tool you are selecting here. And if I click on this tool and if I hide it, gizmo will not be visible. To enable it, I have to click on this. Now I will come to select tool, and in selection mode only if I want to see the gizmo, then I can come here and choose the gizmo move, rotate and scale. See, now all the three gizmos are visible. So now I will also come over here to scale, select all three, and I will set it to 1. And now the next thing is, one more thing in the gizmo you have to observe is, we are going to come to this later in detail, but as of now you have in object gizmo it is set to default. Default means whatever axis we have chosen here, that will be used. So now right now in this scenario, in the world scenario, y axis is this green line, the x axis is this red line, and z axis is this blue, moving top to bottom. However, say for example I select this cube, I will come to rotate tool and I am going to slightly rotate it like this. Now for this cube, the x axis, y axis, this is the z, this is the x, and this is the y. However, if I use the global axis and if I move this, if I select this and move it, it moves in the global axis. But if I want to move it in the same axis in which this cube is rotated, then I can come here, and if I change this to local, see how the axis change now. So this is the z axis, see it will move like this, and this is the x axis, and this is the y axis. Okay, so these settings are present in the gizmo. And apart from this object gizmos, I will set it back to default here. You have empty gizmo. We will come to this later clearly to understand it, but right now if you want to understand this, I will come to file, new, general, I will create a new file, I don't save it, I select the cube, press X and delete it. Now come to add, and I am going to come to empty, and I am going to add an image. So this is an empty image gizmo. So right now when I move it, you can see a yellow strip appearing here. This is what is the image gizmo. So if I come here and if I switch it off, it will not be visible. So if it is visible, using mouse I can scale and I can control it. This is what we call as the empty gizmo. So similar to this empty gizmo, even if I come here, edit, and I am going to add a spotlight. So in case of light also, you have two gizmos here, size and look at. Now you are seeing an yellow spot here, and this yellow spot is look at. So if I move it, I can rotate this spotlight and rotate it in any direction, and then you have an arrow this is going to adjust the size of the spotlight. So I can make it small or big. This is the light gizmo. So similarly, I will again come to File, New, General. I will not save it. I will come back to my camera, and even in case of camera in Gizmo, you have lens and focus distance. So when I have selected the camera, in properties I will select this camera, and you can see this focal length and focus distance present over here. The focus distance is in depth of field. You can see it here. Okay, when I enable depth of field, you can see this focus distance. So now, if I select this camera, say I can change its focal length here, or otherwise if this gizmo is on lens, I can drag it here and change it, and automatically you can see in the properties the focal length is changing. So using the mouse to control the attributes or the values of transformation in different objects, we use this gizmo. This is all about this gizmo. And you can enable, if you click it once, see I will select this and I will select move tool, and now you can see the gizmo. But if I click on this, I can hide it or I can show this. So this is all about the second tool, that is the gizmo. And after gizmo, the third is called as the overlay. Overlay means what all components in your 3D viewport will be overlaid. So if I open this, the very first I have is the grid. So if I switch off the grid, right now I cannot switch it off. I will switch off the floor. Floor and grid are the same. Okay, but if I come to top view, numpad 7 top view, now you have the grid. So if I switch off the grid, see the grid has disappeared. Similarly, if I turn it, you are seeing the floor. So I can hide this floor here. And similarly, you have the axis line. Right now, X and Y axis lines are visible. If I click Z, you can see the Z axis also. And other overlays you have is the text info, the info you are seeing here. This info either you can on it or off it. So similarly, you have the 3D cursor. 3D cursor is the cursor you are seeing here. Actually, what is a 3D cursor is, see you have the 3D cursor tool here. I will select the 3D cursor tool. I will bring the cursor somewhere here and I will come to add, and I am going to now add a mesh, say for example icosphere. So wherever the cursor is, at that point the new object will be added. This is what we call as the cursor, and I can hide that cursor by clicking on this, see. And similarly, I can hide this. If I enable the statistics, it shows all the objects present in my scene. Right now I have 4 objects out of which 1 is selected. So you can see camera, cube, icosphere and light, 4 objects. Total number of vertices I have 42 of 50 is selected. Edges, you have 132 edges in my scene and 120 is selected. Faces 86, 80 is selected. Triangles 90 to 80 is selected. So like this, it gives you the total statistics. So I can enable or disable it here. And after this, in objects, see extras means those are the objects like camera, light. See, these are the objects which never gets rendered. So if I come over here and if I switch off extras, you are not going to see the camera and light at all. So if you are not seeing camera and light on the scene, you come over here and enable extras. So now you can see this. Then when you are building animation, we will come to this later. When we are building or rigging a character, we use bones. I can show or hide bones. I can show or hide light colors. Similarly, motion paths, relationship lines. So relationship lines means, say for example, I have this icosphere. I will come and select, change this to select tool. I will select this icosphere. I will press shift and select this cube. Now I will come to object. I will come to parent and I will click on parent object. Now what happened is, you are seeing a small dotted line between this icosphere and this cube, because if I select the cube and move this, the icosphere also moves because this has become a child of this. And now if I select the icosphere and if I move that, the dotted line is moving. So this is what we call as the relationship line. So that you can enable it here. Then you have the origins. So whenever you are seeing an object, you are seeing one small point at the center. And if you select the cube, you see a small point. This is called as the origin point of that object. Means if I press R and if I rotate this, this will rotate around this axis. And this origin point, either you can show it or hide it. Right now the origin will be shown only to the object that I select. But I can come to overlay, and if I enable origins all, it shows the origins of all the objects. Then I will come back here and I will switch it off. Then after this, you have outline selected. So if I switch it off, when I select, it won't show anything to show me that it has been selected. So that's why always keep this option outline selected on, or otherwise you will not know whether an object is selected or not. Say for example, I come over here and I will select the cube is selected, but if I come here and I switch off this outline selected, see the cube is selected, but here you have no indication that the cube is selected. So for that we use this option, outline selected. And apart from this, you have geometry, where we are going to say I will select this icosphere now, and if I come over here and if I enable wireframe and if I click outside and deselect it, you can see these black lines. These are called as the wireframes. So I can show or hide this wireframe. I can control its thickness. The maximum thickness is 1, and also I can control its opacity here. And then you have face orientation. Face orientation means, I will come to this in detail later, but right now see, when you have an object, an icosphere like this, see in every object there will be two sides, the side that reflects the object and the side that doesn't reflect the object. So if I select this icosphere or if I select this cube, I have the camera here, and if I render it, as of now this object is getting rendered because this is reflecting light. The surface that reflects light are called as normals. Now say for example, I will come over here and if I enable face orientation, all the faces that is going to reflect light will be shown to you in blue color. So to show you an example, I will select this cube. I will come in object mode to edit mode. I will select face selection here, select this face, press X, and I am going to delete this face. Now you can see the inside faces are red because the inside faces are not going to reflect light. So now if I come here and if I render it, see you are not seeing this inside face. Okay, the inside face will not be clearly visible. If I will come back to object mode here and I will select the icosphere and I will show it. If I come to edit mode, I will use the face selection and I will select one or two faces like this and I will delete it. So once I delete it, and I will now press, or I will come to object mode here, select this G and move it here, and if I come to render and if I render it, you can see this area where I have deleted the faces will not be visible at all. It becomes totally dark. So this face orientation, we are going to use it later, is shown here. And apart from this, you have viewer node to control the background opacity, and you have attribute, text and motion tracking. These things I will explain it to you later. So these are, right now we have covered these three tools, and these three tools are used to visualize your 3D viewport. So with this, we have understood the visualization part of this 3D viewport, and in the next session we are going to discuss about the shading part of this 3D viewport. This we are going to discuss it in our next session.